This video follows on from previous ones, which you'll find in the playlist, where we set up a films database. And what we're going to do in this movie is show you how we can add new records to that table, edit them and delete them. So the tutorial notes are here, and I'm going to actually begin this off a new GitHub, which is here as well. So in the previous movie, what we've done is we've used local MS SQL local DB to set up a database. I'll just show you that quickly. Connect up here. Here's my databases, and we've got, there's my films DB, and then in tables we had films, and if I right click and select edit top 200 rows, should see all the data in there. So what we're going to do is set up some web pages, some controllers and views to allow us to add, edit and delete that data there. Okay, so let's start with cloning. I'm going to clone this because I've got ownership over it, but you will probably want to fork this and then you could clone it, and you could write back to your own repo, but I'm going to clone straight off here. So I've got Visual Studio open, and we're going to clone a repository, put the address in there, and then clone that. So this takes a second. Right, it goes off and gets the necessary files, and sometimes it kind of goes full screen, which is a bit weird, but there we go. It's settling down now. I'm hoping over here we start to see the solution and then the project, and there we go. We've got a MVC application. We've got models, views, controllers. We've got a app settings JSON. See, that's pointing at the database, so that's all set up for you. We have in startup that will be registering the default connection there as a service, and our application DB context. So in the under models, we've got application DB context there, and that's creating a DB context for the project, and it's setting up a DB set, a collection of entities, in this case film, from our film model here, which relates to the table I showed you earlier, and we've got films there. Okay, so that's all set up. If we look in controllers, you'll see there's an additional control here, CMS controller, because we're going to be creating an effective content management system, a bit of the website where users can add, edit and delete. So there's going to be a number of views and actions associated with this. It makes sense to create that as a separate controller, which is what I've done here. So similar to the home controller, just called CMS controller. Notice this receives application DB context through dependency injection, as we did in the previous movie around home controller. So that means we can speak to the same database, and there's an action in there for index, and it's using that context, that DB context, to say give me from the films DB set, use the to list in order to give me all the films, and then we'll save those in a model, which is a list of films, and we'll send that out to the view. So in views we have a CMS index to relate to that path, to that routing, because in startup I talked about routing in previous movies. You'll see that we've got the controller of home, so in this case the controller is CMS, and then we've got an action, default of index. So we've got an index page there, which will be the home page for the CMS. And what I've got in there is some HTML. It's going to list all the films, and then it's using tag helpers to link off to either a page where you can view the current one through theme details. You can choose to update it, or you can delete it. So these 3 actions here. Notice that top one is going to home film details, because that was already set up for us. We've got home film details there, and then the other 2 aren't set up. Update and delete will be creating those as part of this process. Notice they're taking an ASP root ID of the film ID. So when we get to that point, we'll be editing a particular record and deleting a particular record. One last thing before I just show you this running is, notice we've got a different layout template. So we've got a layout here saying please use _CMS. So under views and under shared, there is a different layout template there. Just has a different menu system to the other main body of the site. Okay, so that's all set up for later on if we choose to secure this, so we could have login, log out type options on there. Right, let's fire this up and show you what it looks like so far. So fire up localhost, and we should hopefully get, there we go, we've got our home page, we've got our film list. So this is all films, just exactly as done in a previous movie. And we've got search. This allows us to search, and we've got an extra filter option there. We've got the details pages, which I talked about in the search and details movie previously. So this is going to take the primary key in the root ID through to the second page, so that we can get specific information about any given film. CMS here, so see that's got the CMS URL. So this is CMS index if you wanted to prove the point that that's the action that's been loaded. Note we've got a different heading up here because it's using a different layout. So back to the others, you see the CMS home drops. So we've got a different, subtle, only slightly different menu system up here. So these here will link through to back to that same details page. So this page is performing a lot of work for us. I can just check the information, and what we're going to facilitate through here is the ability to add, update and delete. So these haven't been done for us. You'll see that we'll get dead ends on each of those, and that's what we're going to set up next. Right, so there's our CMS. I'll just close that down, and the first thing we're going to look at is actually adding a page. So I'll just tidy up what I've got here, and we're going to start in the controller, and the tutorial helps you out here. So I've already shown you there that we've set up the controller to give us a list of all the current films, and what is in the controller is a link there to add a film. It's using the tag helper to say call CMS add film action. So what we're going to need to do is in our CMS controller, which this is referencing, is create a add film action. So in CMS, let's do that. Now what you might notice in here is that this has got this attribute up here to tell us that this is going to be called by HTTP GET, because we're going to have a post action as well. So in the CMS controller, I'll add that in. So we've got an action of add film, so we will need a view. This is a CMS controller, so in CMS we're going to need a new view. So let's add that in and match that name. So it's going to be an empty razor view. and I'll save this as add film.cshtml. So we've just got an empty razor document, empty view, and what we're going to put in there though is this. So it looks to be loads there, but it's just basically a big HTML form with fields to match all of the fields in the database, with the exception of the primary key, because that will get sorted out for us at the database end. So I can copy that, and that's going to form the basis of my view inside of here. So there's nothing particularly exciting going on there, just a big old form. I should point some bits and pieces out though. Well, again, there would be an issue there because I do need to sort the namespace out, because I didn't know what the namespace of this project would be. So this is loading in the model, so we need to make sure that we've got CRUD. That's the name of my project. Now, I should point out actually, but this is referencing film form. So notice there is a separate model called film form. This is just going to give me some flexibility when it comes to form validation. So it's sometimes useful to have a model that matches the form as well as the database. Very similar, but we can put some subtle differences in there to help us with form validation. The other thing that we've got inside of the view is we've got our form with a controller of CMS and an action of add film. Now that is going to post this data. So that will create a HTTP post verb method, a method of post to post these values through. And this introduces another tag helper here. You see these ASP4. This is just a neat way that you can tie these values together so that the label is attached conveniently to the input tag, and it'll work out the data type, everything. Okay, so those are all done there. Right, so let's save that. Let's just save the CMS controller as well, so I could test it at this point here. And that's basically just the initial HTTP GET part of the view setup, because what you should see is we'll be able to get so far into this. So when this settles, we'll go to CMS. We're going to go to add film, and there's our form. You see, if I right click and just inspect that, just show you what the tag helpers were doing. See, they just added the IDs and names for me and the for, which is great. And that's the result of the tag helper up there setting the action, and see there's the method of post. Now if I did post that, we haven't got anything set up to receive that at the other end, so even if I do have valid data in there, it's going to bomb out because it's sent a post to add film and there's no post set up to receive it. So let's fix that next. So that's why it was useful to differentiate between this get and the next action, which will be this one down here. So we've got here a second action with the same name of add film, but notice it's got HTTP post in front of it. This is going to receive the model from the form. That's why we've got that film form model, because we can just send the model through. That was something that we looked at in a previous session when we looked at sending data from views to controllers. So we're going to say this is a new film based off that model, and read in all the values, and then take those values and then run them through db context is add method. And then once we've added it, we then need to save it. So those two actions will save it. And then I've got a redirect here where I'm choosing just to redirect me back to the index of CMS, so I can see whether that's successfully been added in. So let's copy that. So this is going to be the post view that sits underneath there. Right, so we've got two. So notice these two both got the same name, which you might think will cause problems, but they are differentiated by the HTTP method that's been used to call them. Right, so let's save that and fire that one up. So over we go to localhost as ever. Let's go to CMS. Let's go to add film, and we'll add in a new dummy film. Or say it's a 12 certificate. We'll add some description. Now we haven't got an image for that, so I'll just put in none, and we'll say it's $12.99, and we'll give it a rating of 4 and a release date. Okay, this could be improved, but the basics will hopefully be there. So if I add that, it's going to post it. Let's bring up this fella over here, so we might get an opportunity to see the post go out. Let's see, with a redirect we'll probably miss it. Yeah, it's too quick, but off it went. There was add film. We got a chance to see that down here. There we go. There was the data that was posted. And then once that was arrived in the action, it added it to the database and redirected to CMS. And these films are just in order that they were added in. So at the bottom, I'm hoping there is our dummy film. If I click on it, there's no image, but you can see that it is there. Okay, so that's the first part of the CRUDing done. That is the insert in SQL terminology, and that was done in here with the DB context using add. So next up, we're going to edit a record. So we previously added a brand new record. Just tidy this up and just notice we've got 2 returns in there. We'll get rid of that one. But the next thing I would like to do is, let's just fire this back up. We want to be able to edit that new record because we might want to change the price or the name or the film certificate or the star rating, whatever it happens to be. So let's fire this up. So we go to the CMS and we've already added this one here. So next we'd like to do is click on update and have the ability to update the film. So at the moment you see that's receiving a primary key, but there's no action or view set up for that. So let's do that next. So first thing I'll need to do then is create a view for this. So we're going to, this is editing the data. So in the controller, I'm going to create this view. It's going to receive the ID as a root ID parameter, and it's going to use that to query the database, the DB context, the film's DB set, to find. So that's going to look for a value based on its primary key and then populate a film model. Then what I'm also going to do is create myself a second variable called film form. That's going to take those model values and populate them into film form, because that's what I'm going to send back out to the view for validation purposes. And there's a view bag message used there as well if I needed it. So I'm going to copy that and let's put this inside of our controller. So we've got a action now. So with an action we'll need a view. So I'll just save that, and in the CMS let's create a new, add in a new view, empty razor page, and let's call this update film.cshtml. And we've got a standard chunk of HTML for a form here. So let's copy that view code. So it's mainly just boring old HTML. So that can go in there. There is some things to note here. So first of all, just make sure the namespace matches that of my current project. There we go. That should get rid of that error. Great. And then just to be aware that it's using the CMS layout template, and we've got a form here with a tag helper of controller, a tag helper of action. So it's going to call CMS update action. That's going to be posted as with the add example. But we're reading in the current values. So we've sent through to this our film form with the current values in it that's distributed via these tag helpers. So we'll be able to see the current values before we decide whether we want to change them or not. And we want the current values in most cases are going to stay the same if we say we're only changing the price. So we'll read in the current values and then be able to just change the ones that we're interested in. You'll notice that the primary key here, the film ID, is in as a hidden field. Not doing anything sly or malicious there, we just don't want users to mess around with the primary key, but we will need the primary key to make sure that we do update the correct record. Right, so that's all going to be viewed initially when we make a HTTP GET request. So this is part of the solution, as with the add-in example, where we'll need to put the HTTP post logic in a second, but let's just show you what we've got so far. So off to localhost as ever, the ever accommodating localhost. So in we go, and we'll go to CMS, and we'll scroll to the bottom, and we'll pick up update, and see there's the form with the pre-populated data, and it's basing that off that value there. So you could actually change that to another value and it would pick up a different film. Okay, so that's what those links are doing for me. They're taking through the relevant data. So if I right click and inspect, you'll see that each one of those forms has had the value read in. There's the film certificate C, it's been given its 12 value. This is what the tag helper's doing, giving me the film certificate ID, name and 4. There's our primary key hidden away, so you can't see that there, but it is there because we all need to know which one we want to update. And there's the action, is it would go to this address and it would post it. So that's the action we need to create next because that's not there. So that's the next job. So back in the controller then, we need to add in this action. So notice this is a post action and it's going to receive the film form model. We can check to see whether it's valid. So if we've got a valid model, we will then create a new film. I'm calling edit film based off the film model, populating all the values, and then we're going to run that through DB context. This is DB sets update, so that's our DB set, and we're going to update it with edit film, and then we call DB context is save changes. And like with the add example, I'm just going to redirect out of here back to the index page. So that actually is redundant, like in the previous example. I could remove that. Okay, so let's copy that, and we'll trundle over here. Make sure I'm in the right. I want to be in CMS controller, and in we go. Right, so actually I'm going to leave that there because it might be needed for validation. Let's Yes, because if we've got an if condition, we should really leave that in. Would that be the case on the previous one? I think we're good on the previous one. Right, so let's fire this up. So I'll save that. Let's go to CMS. Go to update. Reads in the current values. We want to change it to update film. So dummy film 2. Let's hit update. Let's bring this into play as well in Chrome so we can see hopefully any interesting network traffic as a result of this, or hit that. And off it goes. So off it went to update film. That was where we posted the values. And then down here we can see there's all the values that were posted. There's the new name of the film, new title of the film. And then it redirected us back out of there. So there's the primary key. It redirected us back out of there and put us into the page, the index page of the CMS, and there's our dummy film 2. Great. Okay, so that's editing and adding new records in. Before we look at delete, let's look at validation. Let's add some validation now then. So if we went to add film and we didn't fill out anything, we're going to get an error. So we don't want that situation arising. So what can we do to prevent that? Well, first thing I'm going to do is inside of the film form model, so one reason to keep them separate from the film is I can add in these required attributes. So I'm going to say that film title is required, so put that onto there like so, and we can do the same with film certificate for starters. Let's save those, and then in the model we've got our add film here. So this is where the data would get posted in. So what I'm suggesting that we do here is that we have some conditional logic around the outside of that. So it's in here in the notes. So we could say is model valid, have it do all of this. If it's valid, great, it'll redirect. If it doesn't fall into that if block, we'll just have it return a view. So I'll show you, we could add that in bit by bit, or you could do it in a one big chunk, but basically, oops, I'm going to put a if condition around all of that logic down to here. And then underneath there, we'll just do a return view. So that would get called if it didn't validate the model. So the validation is expecting film certificate and film title to be present. So, and then we need to, well, let's just show you that running as it is up to now. Right, so we add a film and we add, and you see it doesn't get me any further, but I don't get any feedback as to what's gone wrong. So the next thing would be to provide some feedback, and the neat thing is we have good old tag helpers will help us, so we can get some feedback through these tag helpers. So we've got span here, validation for film title, so I'll grab that and let's put this in our add film underneath the film title there, and we could do the same with film certificate. Just make sure it's got the correct name. So this is a tag helper. It's going to automatically give us an error message. I've styled it up in my style sheet with a class of error, so we'll save that. Let's fire up the local host. So we go to add film, we try the trick of adding a blank record, and it comes back here with those error messages. So it's picked up the styling. These are the default error message: film is required, field is required. You can customize these as well, which is even more fun. So if I go to film form, we could customize them. So let's customize the title error there. So if we're missing a film title, let's change that to required and then give them an error message. Don't make me guess what film we're talking about. Right, so let's save that and we'll go and start the debugging. So CMS, add film, add a blank one. There's the personalized customized message. And we could do the same. We could use the same tricks on the update as well. Let's just check the update film. There's a validation in there for the title and the certificate already in the update. So let's say that our user for some reason decides to update the film and not put those values in, we can get the same validation occurring there. It's using exactly the same setup. Got a, if the model is valid, there we could wrap that around, then we've got a same return value. So redirect if it works, take them back to the view and display the error messages if not. Okay, so that's how you can add some validation. The neat thing about that is server-side validation. You can also add some JavaScript client-side validation on top of that to make your applications even more secure and more user-friendly. But that's all done server-side for us by the cleverness of tag helpers and the MVC. So the last thing to look at is deleting a film, and that's next. So the last thing to add into our CMS would be the ability to delete a film, and we've got the hyperlink set up here in the index page. Like with the update and edit option, it's taking the primary key through to an action of delete film. So that's what we need to set up. Okay, so I'll go back and we're going to be inside of the controller again, the CMS control. Let's just free up some space here. So if I go to controllers, CMS controller, this is the last of these three. Give us the full set for CRUDing. So we are going to initially create a view. So I'm going to create an action inside of CMS controller. Put this at the bottom of the, after the one that we just did for edit. So what's that doing? It's just like the update film in many ways. It's taking the primary key from the root ID. It's running a query to find out which film we're talking about, and it's going to pass that as a model through to the view. So we'll need a corresponding view. So in view CMS, let's create a new view, an empty razor file, and I'll call this delete film to match the name of the action, CSHTML. So there's our empty view, and what I could drop in there is this razor code here. So we're going to put in a little form. It's going to take the primary key of the model and ask them if they want to delete it or not. There's a little link in here using a tag helper to take me back to the index page, just saying I'd like to keep it. So it gives you a get out so that you don't the user can decide that they don't want to delete it. So in that lot goes. So there will be an issue with the namespace there, so just make sure that that matches, because I didn't know what the namespace would be when I put the tutorial together. Let's save that. So as I say, the important things are there, the hidden field. Now there is an issue there. That should be, it's cleverly using IntelliSense there, because I must have not updated that in my notes, because that must be film ID. See, it knows what I'm talking about there. Great. This is Visual Studio earning its keep. Right, let's save that. And we'll test this now. This is only half of the solution because we need to build the post logic in as well to deal with the post. So we go to CMS. Let's delete that test one that we put in earlier, that dummy one. Now it's not going to delete it, but it will take me to here where I can see that I'm given the option to keep it or delete it. It's telling me, is that the one I want to keep? Let's just right click and inspect that. So just things of interest, we've got a form of post. So it's going to post back to the current location. This is a security feature that the MVC automatically puts in for us, but there's the primary key that it would send back as well. Okay, so we haven't set the post value up, so that's going to fail. So that's what we'll do next. So we need to create in our actions an action to actually delete the data, which is this here. So it's going to be posted in. And so we've got the same name as the previous action. We'll accept the model, and we're going to use the remove method of DB context. Of DB set, that is actually to remove the model and then save changes from DB context to delete it. So let's stick that into our controller. So when this works, that data really is gone. So that's why it's nice to put the kind of confirmation step in, give the users a chance to back out so they can change their mind. Let's fire this back up. Find the film we want to get rid of. Click delete. Are you sure that's the one you want to get rid of? Yes, we are. Let's bring our friend the Chrome network tab in so we can see the action over here. Let's delete that. Off it goes. It makes a post request and it sends down here the film ID along with this, which is to do with what's known as a CSRF security. So that's great, it's done that for us. We've got the film ID there. That gets run against the remove method there of the DB set to remove that from the entity list, saves those changes, redirects us to the index page so we can see that it's gone. Okay, so there you go, that gives you the full set. You've got the ability to add new records, you've got the ability to edit them, and you've got the ability to delete them. Thank you very much.